Hello there. I'm here to talk today about something that I kind of been going around lately quite a bit, but I haven't really talked directly about. And that is, I am a liberal, and this is something that doesn't seem to be as popular as it had been at once. And there's a reason for that. There's been millions and millions, maybe billions of dollars spent in the media to destroy the concept of liberalism. We have almost everything on AM radio that's talk shows is all comes from the anti-liberals, and of course there's a whole couple of networks on television that are anti-liberal, and there's many newspapers. And in the United States, there's a lot of these are owned by foreign entities. So you got to kind of question what is the reason that these Rupert Murdochs and these Reverend Sung Young Moons and so forth are attacking the concept of liberalism. And it's, of course, I believe it has something to do with their effort to bring about a oligarchy in the United States and around the world, whereas they've destroyed the idea that constitutional government has anything that can offer people, and in hopes that people, by becoming despaired with the government, they will take the power away from the government. And where will it go? Well, it creates a power vacuum, and of course goes to the highest bidder, which is international corporations. So, what we ought to understand, I think, is what is a liberal? What does it mean to be a liberal? And the answer to that, I think, when you have a definition, because I think a lot of disagreements come down to semantics. What the first thing you should do is look it up in the dictionary. So I looked it up in the Webster's New 20th Century Dictionary Unabridged, which is a dictionary that I purchased that's about this thick. I was going to bring it here to show you, but it's one of those really thick dictionaries. And I looked, the first definition it had for liberal was suitable for free men. That's the first one. And then they had all the adjective meanings of liberal. Others would be the democratic or republican form of government as distinguished from the monarchy. And I guess those are historical meanings. And then there was the ones that were the noun versions of one being favoring reform or progress, as in religion, education, etc., especially tending toward democracy and personal freedom. And then the last one they had was one who advocates greater freedom of thought and action. So those are the definitions that the dictionary gives for liberalism. And I suppose there are many of you out there who don't like those concepts, but I personally stand with those concepts. And I believe that the attack on liberalism and the word liberal, because liberal has become largely a dirty word in the media nowadays. Nobody wants to be called a liberal. They try to say progressive or moderates or something. Nobody wants to be a liberal. But I stand with those meetings. I do believe in greater freedom of thoughts and actions. And I think that some of the things that are done, maybe from the Democratic Party or from the left, as they call it, aren't always liberal. I point to a couple of things, such as banning cigarettes. That seems to be, something that you would allow people to do with greater thoughts and actions. But, we're sitting here today on the day when the Supreme Court just ruled that all 50 states have to allow for gay marriage. That's a liberal move. It's allowing greater freedom of thoughts and actions. And why do people attack the word liberal when I think most of those things are very good? Well, the reason being is because they really, truly don't want those things to be. And this is what they're doing. It's an Orwellian double-speak type of thing. People like Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter and the like attack everything liberal and liberalized as something evil. They try to compare it to, equate it to all liberals are communists, or all liberals are Satan worshippers, atheists, or whatever. You know, maybe there are some liberals who fall into all those categories, but there's liberals that are all over the place. That's beside being liberal that somebody would think that way. Liberal means that the United States of America, I believe, was founded more by liberals than by the Christian religion. Guys like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, described himself as a liberal, and James Madison described himself as a liberal. They came out of the 17th century, 18th century movement toward what they call rationalism, where they had followed people like John Locke and Jean Rousseau, who preached about, well, in different ways, the quality of allowing people to have liberty unto themselves. They had a difference of opinion even back then about how they go about having liberty for each other. But Locke believed that government was absolutely necessary in order to control the worst parts of human nature. And Rousseau believed that government was somewhat unnecessary because if people were allowed to live in their own way, they would eventually be the best people as possible. But both of these concepts came together, and John Locke especially, and they wrote what is the Constitution of the United States of America, which is a liberal document written by liberals. And the concept of the Constitution and law, I think most conservatives have it backwards today. It isn't the law that restricts your freedom. It's the lack of law that restricts your freedom. Because if there's no law written down and applied evenly across the board and written there for everybody to see, then somebody's going to make those decisions, and it's always going to be the ones who have the most power. And so that's called arbitrary use of power. And the idea behind having a government and having a law that's written down for everybody to see allows everybody to be equal and clear about what the law is. Now, we go into this day and age. The people who don't like liberals, one of their biggest complaints is that the liberals want to redistribute wealth and give the money to a bunch of freeloading, lazy people who never worked a day in their life and are poor and lazy, and end up getting all these wonderful benefits from the government that they were able to manipulate the liberal government to give them by taking it away from the working person who works hard and then gets taxed, or the rich people who work hard and get taxed. And then they say, well, then all these lazy, good-for-nothing people just live on the dole and live it up all the time. That's a worst-case scenario, but that's not really what's happening. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't any people who do that, but it's very difficult to convince me, and I hear people talk like this all the time. It's very difficult to convince me that being poor is such a great thing. I know there are some people that feel that way. Well, I'll just take it easy and take what I can. But if you had a choice behind a quality, well-paying job and living on the dole, I think you'd take a quality, well-paying job almost every time. It's not as easy and as comfortable to be poor as a lot of these people think it is. What they're doing is they're buying this whole movement that's being pushed by the wealthy to attack the poor. So what the wealthy do is they pay money to the media, and they have places like Fox News and so forth tell you that everybody that's poor is just lazy and stealing from you. And you go after the poor people and you start attacking their programs. In the meantime, the wealth hasn't been going down to the poor in this country, and it hasn't been going down to the poor in the world. The wealth has been going up to the rich. And over the last 30 years, since this movement to the right has occurred, The money hasn't been going down to the poor people. The poor people aren't doing better. The rich people are doing better. They're doing much better. There's greater and greater amounts of the total assets going into the hands of the very wealthy and away from the middle class and the poor. And yet somehow they've got you all twisted around to believe that it's the poor people that you got to attack. The poor people are taking your money. Well, I personally believe that government is a good thing. I personally follow John Locke. I follow what the Constitution of the United States follows, and they say we, the people, in order to form a more perfect union and provide for the common defense and ensure domestic tranquility and promote the general welfare, which a lot of people ignore when they read the Constitution, that promote the general welfare part. That's in the Constitution. That I believe in that stuff. I believe that maybe it's because I was raised in America and I'm an American and I believe what's written in that preamble of the Constitution. But there are so many people, they haven't really read the preamble of the Constitution. And they're trying to think that this whole government thing and big government is bad, and government control is always going to be a bad thing, and you got to let the free market take over and get rid of the government. Well, I am a constitutionalist. I am a liberal, and I disagree with that attitude completely. I think that this country was built under the concept of the Constitution of the United States, and that's where it's been going away from over the last many years, because what we're seeing right now is a quiet revolution in which they want you to believe that the government has no good use, and therefore somebody else is going to take over that power. Who do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to be the poor people? No. It's going to be a handful of very powerful and wealthy men. It's moving in that direction, has been moving in that direction, and this is an oligarchy. Well, thank you.